macros in dieting. What are they? How do I count them? And why should I care? Coming up next. Counting calories. Boring, uninteresting, not the most fun thing you can do. And if you're gonna spend the time to do it, in that case, you need to be counting them correctly. And getting that ratio correct between your macros or macronutrients is how you count calories correctly. And this goes into play for any diet that you could think of, whether it be a keto diet or an Atkins diet or a Mediterranean diet. Understanding your macros is very important, and that's why I'm going to go over that here today. Why counting calories? It's important to look at your macronutrients is because the macronutrient ratio can help change your body composition. What a lot of us want to do as we're losing weight is that we don't want to just lose weight and become a smaller version of ourselves. We'd like to actually change our body composition. So we'd like to lose fat and not necessarily lose any of our muscle, or gain some muscle and lose some fat and change that body composition. It kind of can change the overall way that we look. First of all, what are macros? Macros stands for macronutrients. They consist of the three major calorie sources. You have carbohydrates, you have proteins, and you have fats. Macronutrients are called macronutrients because they're needed in large amounts as opposed to micronutrients that are needed in small amounts. Micronutrients are going to be things such as vitamins and minerals. Let's first start with carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are one of the main calorie sources for many people. Carbohydrates contain foods such as starches like a potato or pasta. It can include breads. It can also include your vegetables, fruits. All these are a good source of carbohydrates. Not all carbohydrates, however, are created equally. I kind of like to look at carbohydrates as split into two groups, a low glycemic carbohydrate and a high glycemic carbohydrate. The best way to think about the difference between the two is how fast it digests. So when you're thinking about carbohydrates and keeping your body satiated and full longer, but also with the fuel that it needs to run, what you're looking for is a balance between slow digesting carbohydrates and fast digesting carbohydrates. I am a big proponent of getting as many slow digesting carbohydrates in your diet as possible. If your diet is consisting of slow digesting carbohydrates, a lot of times you'll feel full longer while having the energy that you need to go throughout your day. This a lot of times leads to less overeating and also less feeling of hungriness, especially if you're dieting or you're just trying to maintain your weight. The easiest way to kind of remember what's a slow digesting carbohydrate versus a fast digesting carbohydrate is where does it grow? I always say that if it's a vegetable and it grows above ground, most of those are going to be your slow digesting carbohydrates. If it's a vegetable and it grows underground, a lot of these are going to be a little bit faster digesting. Things that grow below ground are things like a potato or carrot. Carrots are pretty decent, but they can be a little quicker digesting than, say, for instance, something that grows above ground like a celery or lettuce. And some of the faster digesting carbohydrates, then if you're trying to maintain a healthy balance, a lot of times these should be avoided, are things such as refined sugars that you may find in a sugary soda or you may find in processed fruit juice. The more processed your food is, especially if it's a carbohydrate, it tends to digest a little quicker. That quick digestion sounds like it should be a good thing, but it's not. That quick digestion is going to be what leads to a spike in your blood sugar, which is going to give you also a spike in your insulin level, which is going to convert all that sugar into stored energy. One of the ways your body is going to store that energy is fat, and nobody wants extra fat. So overall, making sure those carbohydrates are digested slowly and evenly, it's going to keep you full longer. It's going to keep fat off you. You're going to feel better like 99% of the time. And if you ever once in a while want to treat yourself to a quicker digesting carbohydrate, pick some fruit. Fruit a lot of time has fiber in it if it's unprocessed, right off plant that it grew on. And that can be a great source of a quick digesting carbohydrate. If you need that, like if you need a little pick-me-up before a workout or during the day when you're feeling like a little sluggish, a piece of fruit is a good choice for a quick digesting carb if you're not avoiding them completely. Besides weight loss, One of the other things that's interesting with carbohydrates is that a quick digesting carbohydrate, as I said before, is going to spike that insulin level. And with the spiked insulin level, your body is going to start storing those excess carbohydrates that are in your system into fat, and it will put it into your muscles also if your muscles need some fuel. When your insulin keeps spiking again and again, this in the long term, if it's an unhealthy spike that's happening too often, your blood is being consistently overrun with too many quick digesting carbohydrates, this can lead to type 2 diabetes, and there's a plethora of problems that come along with that. One of the other things is if you have been diagnosed with prediabetes, amazing thing to do is to start trying to eliminate as much as possible those quick digesting carbohydrates. And when you minimize those quick digesting carbohydrates, a lot of times even if you're pre-diabetic, you can bring yourself back to having a normal glucose tolerance. And that way the sugars that are in your body will stop wreaking havoc as much as they had in the past. Number 2, proteins. Proteins are used by your body to build muscle, bone, cartilage, and almost any other structure of your body that's necessary for its daily function. Hormones, enzymes, and other bodily fluids often are proteins also. This is including your blood. Proteins are ubiquitous across your body, and form equals function. So how the protein is wrapped and formulated kind of dictates on what it actually does in your body. If you compare these proteins back to carbs, proteins don't digest as quick as carbohydrates. They tend to digest, I would say on average, a little bit slower than a slow digesting carbohydrate. This is going to allow it to provide a more sustained energy source for your body over time. And your body can convert proteins into glucose for energy if necessary. So your body can take those proteins and turn them into sugar for your body to run. This doesn't happen all the time, and it's not necessary all the time, but your body is going to use these proteins, its different structures, and build new structures as old ones break down. Proteins are also one of these things that you're going to want to keep track of while you're tracking your macronutrients. And when you're tracking these macros, such as protein, keeping them a little bit higher than maybe what you would do naturally can lead to you feeling a lot better in many cases. Keeping those protein levels high for many people can lead to an increase in energy, as your body doesn't have to fight as hard to rebuild its broken down tissues. Monitoring your proteins is very important, especially if you're dieting. Because when you're dieting, a lot of times what you're trying to do is change your body composition, and you're trying to increase your muscle, decrease fat, or at least maintain your muscle so you can keep the current strength that you have while decreasing fat. And when you do that, having that little bit more protein in your diet can be very helpful. It can help keep that muscle intact, because your body's always going to be needing to build new structures and new function. And if you're not eating enough protein, a lot of times your body will break down some of its current protein and turn it into a different type of protein to build other units that it needs at that point in time. Number 3, fats. Fats, public enemy number 1 for years and years and years. Not so much anymore. Carbohydrates took that role now, and they're now the new public enemy. Fats come in 2 basic forms, roughly. It's a little more complicated than that. However, kind of keeping it in the 2 basic forms is good to start out with. You have your saturated fats and you have your unsaturated fats. Your saturated fats are your fats that are going to become solid at room temperature. This is the best way to check to see if the fats that you're eating are saturated or unsaturated. Is that if it cools down, or if you put it in the fridge, does it have a layer of solid fat on it? If it's becomes solid at cooler temperatures, then a lot of times those fats are your saturated fats. For the most part, saturated fats should be eaten in minimal quantity, as opposed to your unsaturated fats, which can be eaten in a little bit higher quantity. As we speak about fats, fats digest the slowest of all. They digest slower than carbohydrates and slower than protein. Having a diet with healthy fats in it can decrease the rate of absorption of your nutrients. And when your nutrients are absorbed at a nice, slow, yet even pace throughout the day, what you'll notice is that you feel full longer and you stay full off of less calories. And we're gonna get to calories in a minute, but you have to be careful when you're counting the calories for your fats because they can add up quite quickly. Fats are broken down into good fats and bad fat. Good fats are gonna be your unsaturated fats. They're gonna be things such as olive oil or the fats that you'll find in nuts or nut butters. So a room temperature unsaturated fat or good fat is going to be liquid. It's a good way to test to see if the fats that you're eating are good or aren't good. Just a quick litmus test, as they say. However, there are some saturated fats that do have some health benefits that have been shown in some studies. One of these examples is coconut oil or coconut fat. With coconut oil, there's a little bit of controversy in regards to it, whether it's good or bad for you. We're gonna go into that in a little bit more detail in a future video. Fats, along with proteins, are gonna allow your body to build hormones. It's gonna allow your body to have energy stores after it depletes its carbohydrates. It's also going to provide you with, like I said, a nice sustained energy that will last for long periods of time. How do you calculate macronutrients? Ooh, Max, are we about to get back into counting calories? Yes, we are about to get back into counting calories. It stings, it sucks, it hurts, but it works. So we're gonna go over it a little bit right now. So in order to count the calories in your food, it's important to know how many calories are in a certain quantity of food. And so let's start with carbohydrates. Carbohydrates have approximately 4 kilocalories per gram. Why this is approximate is this does have a little bit of a range, but we won't go into that at this point in time. If you're interested in kind of learning about some of the nuance in the range that either carbohydrates, protein, or fats have in their calories, put it in the comments below and I may make a future video about it. Proteins also have approximately 4 calories per gram and are counted similar to the way that carbohydrates are. Like I said, it does have a little bit of variance. Fats have approximately 9 calories per gram. This is quite a bit more than both carbs and protein. However, this is going to be more sustained energy like I spoke of before, but you do have to be careful when you're counting them to not consume too many because they're a lot more calorie dense than any other of your food. A lot of people have asked me over the years, Max, how many macros should I eat in a given day? How many carbs? How many fats? How many proteins? And it kind of sucks, but the answer is not the same for everybody. The answer is going to be completely dependent on what your current goals are, what you're trying to achieve physically, and where you are trying to see yourself in the future. A typical caloric split would kind of go like this. Carbohydrates, 45 to 60%, fats being approximately 20 to 35% of the daily intake, and proteins being that remaining percentage. Like I said, these ratios are going to be completely different based on your goal, based on your diet that you're choosing to follow at any given point in time, and based on the results that you'd like to see in the future. We're going to have several videos coming out over the next few weeks focused on different kind of diets and the ratio of these macros with these different kind of diets and how it's going to make you feel, how it's going to make your body change, whether it be maintaining muscle, losing fat, losing overall body composition, just coming down in size overall. Since now that we know that we may have to start counting calories to hit our goals, some people were like, oh my gosh, writing these down just sounds awful. I don't want to do it. It sounds like too much work. There's some things that can help us out there. One of my favorite apps is MyFitnessPal. You can see a link for it in the description. It's free to use. It's a pretty simple app. And they have a lot of different foods logged in there. And as you log your foods in there, you can kind of make little categories for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So it'll make it easier to count your calories as you go on. And I'm saying this from experience. I spent approximately 5 years in a row counting my calories every day. I started out doing it in a journal book, and I would just write them down every time I had a meal. I would write my calories down. I would also write my macronutrients, my proteins, my fats, my carbohydrates, in order to keep track of it and maintain good body composition to achieve my goals. got very boring very quickly, and I slowly switched over to using MyFitnessPal to do the same type of job. There are several others out there. I found this, for me personally, was the easiest to use, and I could share some of the data with my friends that were doing similar diets at the time, so we could compare and see how our bodies were changing. One of the things that I've been sharing with my family and friends for years is that there are not many things in your life that you have complete control over. However, your diet is one of those things. It may be difficult, it may be challenging, but you have 100% control over it. There's not many things in life that are like that. So take control of your diet. Take the information that we learned today about macros and apply it to yourself. Now that you know what macros are, one of the first things I always recommend is don't change your diet at all. Let's just take a day or 2 days and count your calories and count your macros. You can get a little help from the apps like MyFitnessPal to see how many calories are in different things. Many things have food labels that you can get that information directly off the food label. And count your calories for a day. It will kind of show you where you sit at. It will kind of let you know if you're in the midst of kind of maintaining your weight, what your calorie range is for maintenance. It will also let you know that if you're currently gaining weight, that you may be at a little bit of an excess at that calorie range. And it will also let you know if you're in the middle of losing weight, what calorie deficit. So you'll have calorie number after having counted your calories for a couple of days, and it'll give you a good baseline for whenever you change it in any diets that you have in the future. And this is going to be amazing comparator information. I've done it many times myself, and I'm always blown away with how high my big calorie days are, and equally blown away with how low my low calorie days are. But I appreciate you coming back to the channel, checking out the video. Like I said, my name is Dr. Max Greenlee. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. If you'd like to continue on this journey, hit that subscribe button, become a friend, and let's continue to discover modern health together. Have a beautiful day. If you're interested in learning more information about macronutrients and macros, check it out on my blog, drmaxgreenlee.com.